Claire, that's how I know you're on live because it's where there's a delay.
Welcome everybody to the Just Add Bourbon podcast. I'm Jimmy Don Kerr.
I'm Brad Broaddus.
I'm JD Dameron.
And it is another beautiful Sunday evening here in the hills of Eastern Kentucky. And we're glad to be back with you this week. We'll kind of get back to our normal show next Sunday. We're all itching to get together. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. Brad had to work some today, and we were going to maybe do something today, and then I actually kind of forgot, and Brad had to work. So we'll get back to it next Sunday. But it's hard to go and do our regular show when we can get interviews on, like the gentleman we have tonight. Our guest this evening is Glen Hammond. He is the Democratic candidate for the 31st District Senatorial seat. He's one of the challengers trying to claim the seat held by current incumbent Philip Wheeler for the primary scheduled for June 23rd. Glen Hammond, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. And that's the only red and black I can tolerate, so you're doing well.
Good. Well, we would start one of these with our real gotcha question, which is cats or cards. But you clearly are a cats guy.
Yeah, blue and white, baby.
Yeah. And if people don't know, when he first came on, he said, "What kind of shirt do you have on?" Like, I got mad respect for this guy already. We just started, and he said, "What kind of shirt are you wearing?" And that's my kind of guy. I ain't gonna lie to you, Mr. Hammond. I was like, "Yes, sir." And I was telling him that, Charles Booker, who was nice enough to come on with us, I threw him the L's down right on the show. And so, see, right there you go, guys. So, Glen, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of where you grew up.
Well, due to family circumstances, I've grown up in a couple different places. I've grown up and got huge family ties in both Floyd and Pike County. And I've also grown up a little bit in Lexington as well, due to, family divorce issues. So my mom's from Johns Creek. My dad's from Bull Creek, Left Beaver Creek, and Mud Creek. So, if anything, I'm just surprised that somewhere in my naming that there wasn't a creek thrown in somewhere.
Well, you're like me. You've got Glen Hammond. I always tell everybody, because everybody calls me Jimmy Don Kerr. And I said, if you got two names, you're from the hills.
Yeah. Well, and the funny part about it, you knew you were in trouble when the parents or even the grandparents or the great aunts and uncles, and God rest her soul, my great Aunt Idie, Aunt Blanche used to say, when she used all three, you knew the switch was coming out. So you were done something. But no, I've grown up. I graduated from Betsy Lane, and again, a blue and white school, and then went on to had a chance to play. Was invited to actually the Red Spring training in high school. Went on to play at what I consider one of the top times in 15th region basketball was in 1988 when I graduated. We had, I think we've counted up somewhere around 7 Division I prospects that played Division I basketball during that time, and several others that played NAIA or Division II. And there was even an individual from Martin County that was drafted a year or two by the Pirates after that much. I played again in baseball when I played for Betsy Lane. So it was a great time to play sports growing up. And I had some of the best coaches that Junior Newsom that I would have run through a wall for. And, and I remember the people like Aubrey Taylor that I grew up next to my grandparents on Johns Creek. You couldn't have a better time to grow up and play sports. I went on to play. I graduated from UK, double major in finance and management in 4 years, and then went on to law school and at Salmon P. Chase with a bunch of us that were our judges now in our region and other county attorneys and so forth. So I've been blessed in that sense as far as an education is concerned.
Great. So, and two, before going to the next question, I do want to say, if you're watching us, definitely share this. We want as many people. Kind of the purpose of this is we want, and something that the three of us believe in, is that the voters need to be informed when it comes to election time. And we want everybody to share this and let everyone hear Mr. Hammond's platform. So that leads to the question of you have a law practice there. Just Mullins, I guess, just outside of Pikeville. We were talking, your office is actually just right down the street from mine. Mm-hmm. And what inspired you or led you to actually jump into politics and jump into this race?
Well, to be quite honest with you, when you see your garbage rates going up, you see that we don't have the level of facilities, infrastructure, amenities, if you will, that when I travel to places, and part of my job takes me to be at New York, it takes me to Chicago, it takes me to Cleveland, it takes me to Louisville, Lexington, and I go a lot to London, Kentucky, and you go and you see, hold on a second, they have this, why don't we? Why don't we? And you start looking and you're thinking, so when I was I'll never forget Miss Akers' biology class, and we're sitting there and you have 4 kids trying to dissect a fetal pig, one fetal pig. And you're trying to learn anatomy, and you realize that with the equipment that we didn't have, but they had in Lexington, and you're thinking, well, how can we succeed if we're already 3 or 4 steps behind the 8 ball? And so from that perspective, it's grown. I've watched, I've learned, I've studied. We still have kids today that don't have textbooks, that don't have iPads, that don't have laptops. We've got kids going to schools that are nothing against the facilities, but they're not the same as what you'd find in the Golden Triangle. So although we have improved, you look at Belfry School, beautiful, but you go right across the street, if you will, and you can look at as Mr. Branham took me through, you look at the vocational center there, and it's been, it's literally needs to probably be dozed down, rebuilt to make a state of the art for our students. The same thing with the one at Miller, the same one at other places too. Mr. James in Martin County took me through and showed me the facilities that they just built the new Martin County High School, beautiful facility. But why don't everybody have the same thing here? Because in the end, our school systems, as you all know, are developing us for what we're able to do today in more ways than one. And until we're able to have all the amenities, all the resources that we can give our teachers, the same and pay as the same as what they have in Louisville, Northern Kentucky, and Lexington, we're still going to be fighting. And we've got some ways to go still.
So one of the questions I usually ask right off the bat, because I'm a coal miner, I'm actually a laid off coal miner at this point, is, we've depended on that coal money for a long, long time, coal service taxes and things like that.
Sure.
I just don't see the coal making their comeback like it has in the past. So in 10 years from now, how do you see East Kentucky developing economically? Like what's your plan for bringing in jobs here?
Well, and that's a great point, because in representing coal miners, what I have learned is this, and a lot of family members have taught me this much. And the same thing, that you take great pride in what you do and you're able to provide for your family. But once it's gone, then what? You shouldn't have to move to go to Georgetown, which is becoming the Eastern Kentucky capital of Central Kentucky, if you will.
It's old US 23.
Yeah. I mean, but we're in a situation that we have got to start diversifying our economy. And if you look at my webpage, for Senate, I can tell you is this much. Number one, I believe wholeheartedly that it's a multifaceted approach, but as far as for jobs are concerned, in order to get them and to bring in, I think we need to attract industry that are germane to our area of what we spend. What is that? Side-by-side manufacturers, small engine, Tecumseh, Honda, people like that. We know how to do that. Our miners know how to do this much. They know better probably than a lot of it than the CEOs at these facilities. Let's just be honest. And what happens in prefab modular homes, again, we know how to build these things. Our people are some of the best carpenters, or some of the best welders, some of the best diesel mechanics that there are. So why don't we try to attract industry? And we know now through like the Ross Harris Group that they're bringing in the solar panels for the electricity to help lower our utility rate. Why don't we start looking at trying to bring in battery manufacturers for those? Why don't we start looking at trying to bring in the solar panel manufacturers? Because we are still, and we intend to maintain our title, if you will, as the energy capital of the world. This is a trend that is coming, that we have to be honest about, and we have to capture and maintain our title. Vocational schools are going to be important to us for the endeavor. And what I mean by that much is not only to retrain you for the next job, but also to get our kids ready. We should have a program in place that says that you can walk out of high school with a high school diploma and a trade certificate as well.
Amen.
You know, let's be honest. Why can't we do both? The negativity, it has to go away. We have to start thinking in a more progressive, if you will, and forward-thinking process to expand and to utilize what we have and to make it grow. We know the strip mines that are capable of being turned into true economic development centers, and we know the ones that are not. So we know, like Sykes Enterprise up here, or we know places that we can bring in to diversify our economy. We know those locations. We have engineers in our area that have worked this, that know, and we have the water sewer capabilities already lined up, electrical, for those facilities. We can work on the bonding issue to get people those locations in place. So once you have those and we can go attract, then the next step with this economic phase is, while that is going on, we should be going ahead and finalizing the Mountain Parkway. We should finalize Route 15. We should finalize 645 all the way through Lawrence County, all the way in through Elliott County, and all the way through into Morgan County, tying in and making sure the road is always 4-lane into Moorhead. We also know there's a bunch of other side roads that we need to accomplish as well. Route 80 needs to be 4-lane all the way into 75. We also know that Route 3 there in Martin County needs to be tied into 23, and it needs to extend over into 119 in West Virginia. Once we have some of these bigger roads, and we should have more impact to type roads that can get easier access to a regional, the regional airport there in Martin County, if you will, for all in this region, so that we can expand it as well for purposes of, again, more development for our industry. So those are just some of the things. And then we also know that we have some of the best places to go visit, don't we? We know you've got Break Center State Park. Why don't we look at turning Elkhorn City and Break Center State Park into the White Sulphur Springs of Eastern Kentucky? You've got your lake there, your easy access to that we can fix. We can make year-round whitewater rafting. Why don't we, instead of just saying we're going to do it in a couple months a year, we do it more year-round? So we can expand these areas. We can expand upon those opportunities. And that we have small business people here in this area, like Johnson Industry, that needs to be rewarded and expand upon too. We need to look at helping those individuals not only thrive, but to truly succeed in a much larger fashion. Our infrastructure, we have water and sewer issues throughout Eastern Kentucky. It has to be addressed. It can't be just sit back and say, and everyone gets a letter saying it may cause cancer. You know, who wants cancer? We got a large enough problem with cancer in our region. This is just adding to it. We're going to have to upgrade our facilities in that regard. So we need bigger internet service, a much better broadband internet service than what we have. Lexington, Louisville, Northern Kentucky, Bowling Green, they're able to attract better industry in when they have better resources. We built those places. Our miners, through the coal severance tax, built those places. It's our time. We need it now. Let's utilize and upgrade our vocational schools to give people immediate access to better paying jobs. And I said this on another show. Go over in the Belfry, West Virginia line. They're working on a bridge. And anybody who's familiar with what I'm getting ready to say knows, and this is what I tout as the Kentucky contracts for Kentuckians. They had brought in welders out of Mobile, Alabama. No offense to Mobile, Alabama. But are you telling me out of the tens of thousands of coal miners over the year, those who are out of work, that we couldn't find qualified welders to come in and build our own bridges? Give me a break. I mean, let's just be honest. We have to start investing in ourselves. If it's Kentucky tax dollars, the first bite at the apple has to go with Kentucky corporations doing it. You think I'm wrong? Look at what we have the problem with China right now and those N95 masks, amongst other things. You know, we need to start investing more in ourselves first and foremost. Then, if we're not capable of doing it, we don't have our resources that are capable of doing it, then we can look to another state for them to bring in their individuals to work. But our people want to work. They wouldn't be going to Georgetown Toyota if they didn't.
So you touched on the logistic limitations that we have that obviously need to be addressed. So, you know, if you're elected, what does that look like as far as what steps do you take to actually get that done?
Which part? All of it.
And mainly I'm talking about the conduit of travel coming into Eastern Kentucky, because, you know, we're off the beaten path a little bit. And whereas Richmond and Lexington, you've got 75 and 64 that'll take you anywhere you want to go in the country. Sure. And I think a lot of people don't come here because it's not easy to get to a lot of our towns.
Well, and I'm going to tell you, when I go out into other areas, they're like, Hatfield, McCoy, I've heard about that. What is that much? We're not even promoting ourselves. You know, we have some of the best lakes. We have some of the best facilities, and we don't even brag on ourselves, for lack of a better thing. Maybe it's a pride issue. I don't know. But I can tell you this much. I'm not going to sit back and let it happen anymore. So when we look at tourism, that is not, it's a lower level investment, if you will, upfront cost. So that's one aspect that we have to do, and we have to promote it. But once you tie the Mountain Parkway in 23, you're an hour and 15 minutes from, for the most part, to Charleston. 79, you're an hour and a half, 2 hours to 75. You're an hour and a half, 2 hours to 26, the whole 9 yards. So you're tying into more major interstates. You've got 64 an hour north of us, and even if you're in Lawrence County, it's 30 minutes at most. So we have got to utilize and look responsibly and realistically at the circumstances and expand from there.
So one of the questions I had, and it's actually something that someone that's watching the feed right now asked the question, and it's something that I've long believed myself, is, and you mentioned it earlier, was internet access. Mm-hmm. And we've talked to, we actually had Senator Wheeler on here last week, and he was talking about Kentucky Wired. I have long believed that if we could expand, because we are almost in a more global marketplace now with e-commerce, sure. And I think the coronavirus showed us that as much as anything, that people are willing to shop online. If we could expand our internet access where we've got some of the fastest internet around, we could potentially attract jobs where people could work in their homes, and that would be a nice complement to bringing in a factory or something like that. Do you agree?
110%, not just 100, but 110%. We have got to realize that times are changing. You know, as you go more globally, times are changing. We've got to keep up. We've got to adjust. So when I talk about modern infrastructure, that's just part of it. But at the same time, we can't forget we've got water and sewer, major sewer issues. We can't forget that we've still got road issues that you can purchase on Amazon. But if they can't drive here on good roads to get it or on rail, we got a problem. So they all go hand in hand. You can't separate one out and not have the other tied into it. So it is an issue. And, I learned this much as you living up the living, I guess, is what we do a lot of times with work in our facilities. But up the road, they had to come when I moved down here to the new office. They had to run a complete new trunk line and bring the new internet service over to this side of the road. So it's the same side as you. And what I realized in talking to those individuals, and I asked the questions for a reason more so than anything, because I want to learn. If you're not learning, you're stopping your tracks. And I realized that, what we've had in the past was kind of like a maybe a Yugo. What we were operating with, and other people had Mercedes. It put it in a car sense. Or we had an old truck that couldn't get over 35 or 40 miles an hour, and somebody was out here with an inline 8 or something, a V8, and they had the 6.2, and they were able to go 120 miles an hour in that truck. the point I'm making is they were operating in other areas, not just in this state, but other areas of the United States with much better equipment. And we were getting secondhand, third hand, fourth hand type stuff. It can't be that way. You know, we know, like with, you know, no offense, I've got my first cousin works for AT&T. He'll probably shoot me after this. But the issue is, you know, you go and you drop service, you know, with your Wi-Fi or with your, you know, your cell phones. It can't be that way anymore. Well, they got bigger numbers to make more money in these other areas. But you know what? You're taking stuff away. You're taking copper lines away. You're taking other resources away and expecting us to do what with it? You know, I mean, our people are very ingenious in a lot of ways. We figured out, my grandmother used to know how to take two nickels and turn it into 2 quarters very sensibly back in the day. But at the same time, if you're tying our hands and you're not helping us, and then you can't complain that we're not providing the same type of tax revenue to the state as everyone else is.
So I got a comment off the Facebook live feed, and I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So it says, with your point about Alabama welders, when those jobs are out for bid, can we not just take bids from Kentucky? We need to make it more about the region, less about money, which I think we would all agree with.
Yeah, that was my Kentucky contracts for Kentucky. You realize that a lot of our road signs right now are coming out of Virginia or Tennessee and different places? Why? Are our people not good enough to be invested in? See, I believe they are. Yeah. See, you know, we had a prior administration, a prior governor with a control that believed that we should invest out of state. It's left us with what, $1 billion shortfall essentially. Now we had the COVID pandemic that comes on, and now we're left with taking money again. The Senate did, the control in the Senate, the Republican bunch that wants to take 1.3 out of the funding for our education too, and other things, and not addressing the real issues on how we invest back in ourselves. If we invest back in ourselves with what we were talking about, that Kentucky contracts for Kentuckians, a lot of taxes don't have to be raised. Think about that. You know?
Yeah.
Why? It's a lot of times it's talking about, you know, Bevin's raised how many different areas did that administration and the Republicans down there, how many taxes did they raise upon you, me, and everyone else? A bunch. And we're still got a shortfall. Right. Now think about it.
So my real question though is, like, one of the things we've been doing on this podcast is a opioid crisis series. We've been interviewing people, you know, in recovery that have fought that demon and won. So now it seems like we're still finding opioids, and that people have turned to heroin and meth though in these hills, especially. I understand the pills, because they're so expensive, people have turned to heroin.
Yes,
and
right.
It's a terrible, terrible demon. I understand that. So what's your plan to fight that epidemic?
Well, and my proposal is this much, and I believe that it doesn't matter if it's just the issue of the opioids, because they're still present. We still have that problem too. They've created a lot of this monster that we're still fighting. So why don't we look at and say, every time that we have these big pharmas and their distributors that are associated and pushing it down, and I'm sure you watched that 60-minute series that they had with how they have manipulated the system to take advantage of us here, to take our kin right across the road, so to speak, across the river too, and how they manipulated the system, all for what? Right there, the big money, right? So that's all they know. They don't care about you. They don't care about us. They don't care about our people that are suffering. So what I propose is this much: we know the different levels of classifications that we have as far as pills that are concerned, and some that are more in of themselves prone to addiction than others. Correct? Sure. And we also know that we have one pill that may not be addictive in and of itself, but when it's combined, let's say like a Valium or Xanax with a Neurontin, what happens? It becomes very addictive, right? So we know this much. There's no questions. The science is there. So why don't we do this? Why don't we say, for at least for the next 5 years, you don't get to raise the monies on these cost per pills that you're selling to the state through our Medicaid programs or our insurance programs in this state. So you distributors and you manufacturers, we're going to take, since you've created 90% of this fiasco, let's say, or more, we're going to take and we're going to say, so for each level of addiction that's associated with either singular pill or in combination, we're going to say we're going to take a percent off the top, straight off the top, to pay for long-term treatment facilities that are 90 days or more that we know that work. So you're going to pay them, Big Pharma, not the taxpayers. The taxpayers have had enough of getting taxed and feed, and especially parents and grandparents that are having to try to save people and watching them die and trying their best to keep them from going down that path anymore, because it is a great burden. You watch people, the proudest of individuals, just cry with nothing left in them. They're exhausted emotionally, physically, and any other way. So we have those individuals that pay for these rehab facilities, that they pay for the 90-day and post-recovery 90-day facilities. All right? So not you, not me, not anyone else on this show, or anybody else watching the show. Because you didn't create it, they did. So let's make accountability and responsibility, those terms, actually put them in place. So now they're paying for these facilities. Well, what happens after, let's say that 80% of your funds or 70% of those funds are now gone? So we're earmarking those monies to pay for this stuff, not the 2-week jobs, but the ones that truly we know work. So now any excess monies, let's give that to law enforcement. Let's earmark those to combat the rest of the drugs, because what we're really battling here is, and if they can't, like you just said, if they can't get their pills, a lot of the people, they're going to heroin, they're going to coke, they're going to meth, whatever the case may be. So when we, the only thing a lot of these corporations know is their bottom lines. Let's just be honest. That's the only thing they worry about. Right. So when we do this much, you facilitated an addiction issue. Let's go straight to this point, and let's make sure that you're paying for the addiction and to stop the other drug issues as well. Again, it takes the burden off the taxpayers and puts the accountability and the responsibility in the people that is at the feet of those that are responsible for it. I'm also believe that we do not have a choice anymore. Quit listening to the propaganda of Big Pharma, and let's get serious about medical marijuana, and let's get it done now. It is past time. When you watch little Susie or little Bobby sitting over here with a seizure disorder, and that it could be fixed or addressed not by Big Pharma, but by what we've historically produced here in these hills for a long time, in a sense, and we can fix this much at low cost, both to the families and to the healthcare industry itself. Why aren't we doing it? That's the question. What's taking so long? This is common sense. This is not I'm not talking about everybody driving around smoking weed and kumbayas back in the 60s. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking specifically, first off, I don't have a problem with it. Listen, I really don't. But what I'm talking about is this much. As a friend of mine, law enforcement officer told me, he said, I've never had trouble with an individual on weed who's stoned, but I've had a whole lot of people that I've had to worry with that's on synthetic marijuana or this drug or that drug and everything else. So unless we're going to get serious and because it's a risk reward system, it comes down to finances. It really does, until we get serious about it. And that means also putting a drug court into the juvenile system to avoid the adult system, people going into and lower our costs in our court system, which they need to pay for. They need to pay for this much. At the end of the day, the intent would be, we are now saving more lives, and we are now in a position to where more people are productive, coming out with fewer side effects.
Also, one of your talking points on your website or your platform is talking about affordable health care.
Yes, sir.
So how do you plan on making that work here in the eastern part of the state?
All right, you have 70% or so of our population that's on Medicaid or Medicare, or maybe it's 80%. It depends on who's talking at which time, right?
Right.
So we're not, and it's true. We have got to, I'm friends with a lot of doctors. And one of the biggest problems that they have, number one, and they want to treat individuals with Medicaid, is that they don't have enough reimbursement with them. So with that much, we need to put us in a situation where we raise the reimbursement rate so people can get done. So it's going to require some expanding of Medicaid. Let's just be honest. We don't have a choice. We also have to look at, and one of the biggest problems in the healthcare industry is there's not enough competition. Pharmacists are getting killed right now, and I was talking to Joel Thornsberry about this too, are getting killed because all of the big corporations are huddling and taking up these things, and there's fewer and fewer people out here to sell and to compete with. So the more problems we have with competition and have been eliminated, the more that they can set prices at a much higher level. That has to be addressed.
Like, I feel like there almost needs to be a set of what you can charge for certain. Like, you can't charge $225 for a Tylenol at one place, and then it's $6 at the other. I think that's anyway. Go ahead, Brad.
No, I was just going to ask. Obviously, with I think it's the right direction going toward the pharmaceutical companies, because I think a lot of times, we try to arrest our way out of some of these problems, and we're doing brain surgery on a heart attack. But I know one of the challenges historically is that, you turn on the TV and every other commercial is a pharmaceutical commercial. So you have all of that money and all of the money that's injected, into the lobbies and those things. So how do you fight that fight when you've got all of that money that's going into the media? And I mean, I think it's fair to say that a lot of the open conversation is muzzled.
No, I agree. And I'm going to tell you, it's frustrating. As many doctors have told me, said, Glenn, people will come in and say they know which medicines they want before they even walk in the door and make their diagnosis. And not just the open media, but you can get online now and make a diagnosis. I had an employee, I've got one that really I had to move her out of reading medical records because she'd have a book and she'd sit there and say, I've got this disease, I've got this disease, I've got this disease. And I was, oh my gosh, But the point is, we have to take back control. Our people are way too important. It's either billions of dollars or millions of lives. Which one is it? And until we start doing the rank and file and knowing what's more important in this country, we're going to be fighting this much. We need a national CASPER system. I think that goes without saying. And we need to realistically look at controlling how often these pharmaceutical companies get to raise their monies, both through the Medicare Plan B, as well, the programs, as well as any other level too.
So we had a comment.
I don't get to raise my rates every other day. No, you're fine. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were coming. But what business gets to raise their rates continuously at any whim? I don't know. Who does?
So one of the questions that came in on the Facebook Live, which I think is a good point, she said, did I miss the part of we make big pharmaceuticals pay for rehab? Is that something that's feasible? Is that doable?
Yes,
is that something you'd be on board with?
I propose it. I stand by it 100%.
So the next question I have, and it's something we've talked a little bit about already, and that has to do with infrastructure. And JD's going to roll his eyes here in just a second. I might even let him say it. JD, what board am I on?
He's on the Martin County Water Board. He's the head guy.
I'm the chairman.
He's also in the book.
Yeah, JD makes fun of me all the time because I say, well, I'm the chair of the water board. But
there's no gray hair in there dealing with that. I mean,
listen, you see how short this is? I started to get my hair cut shorter and shorter so that the gray hairs wouldn't poke out. And that is the truth. That is not me being funny. That is the truth.
It's not getting more stressful. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. So one of the things, we came on board about 2.5 years ago, and I think I'd been on the board. The story I tell is I got sworn in, went to my first meeting 2 days later, and 5 days later, the whole system collapsed. So that was my introduction to being on the Martin County Water Board. Now, we have made massive, massive progress in the past 2.5 years. And I mean, I've seen you, kind of out campaigning and doing those things. And I know that's what you have to do. You've got to be out there talking about those issues. The biggest thing that I would tell you right now, I mean, like we have tested, and I'm very passionate about this. It's almost gotten into my blood as far as like I almost live for it. We have passed the Division of Water, the Kentucky Division of Water's water quality test for going on almost 4 years now. There have been universities. We have Virginia Tech in that probably went to 10 of the worst, or people, I wouldn't say the worst, but people complained about their water quality the most. And all 10, we passed every single one of them with flying colors.
I've seen them.
University of Kentucky has been in here. I haven't heard the results of that, but I haven't heard anything bad from that either. So the thing that we talk about all the time is we don't necessarily, now the infrastructure, absolutely, the complaints that we got and the noise that we were hearing, the negativity was warranted because for years it had been mismanaged or our infrastructure hadn't been repaired properly. But now I've got the management company in. We're starting to head in a really good direction. Like we just reduced water loss in the month of May by like 6%. Like we were all, excited. So we've got people heading in the right direction. And my question for you is this. We feel like we have a perception problem as much as we have a water problem. We don't necessarily have the problem that we had in the past. We are way past that at this point. As if you were elected, what could you do to kind of help? Because you're talking about 5 people or 4 people right now sitting on a board who are working their guts out. And we've got people out there talking negative about the water in political races and different things. And it's really frustrating to us when we know that what we need is to almost kind of join forces and start pushing this thing forward and pushing the narrative like, look, guys, this thing is headed in the right direction. And how could we, you as a state senator or the state senator here, if you were elected, what could we do together to kind of change that perception and move it forward?
Well, a couple fold. Number one, people remember this much. People want to find the negative and the problem first and foremost. I mean, you can't get approval to the extent that you ever need. Now, what I was talking about, number one, the water problems is this much. There's a quality issue in general in Eastern Kentucky, and I think there's been articles out on that much, historically speaking.
Sure.
What I also know is that you all need more money there in Martin County, as we do here too, to expand upon and to provide better services hopefully at a less costly rate into the future too, as far as lines are concerned. We've got an issue here in Pike County in places too. So you never stop improving. But what I can tell you is this much, that's be something that we sit down, and I think in open forums to show and to tout and to take it to the media and show what you all have accomplished. Is it done? No. Is it you're getting closer and then right direction? Yes. Just don't stop. You're working that much. And that's great, because I'm going to tell you something. There's not a lot of you. There is not a lot of you willing to take it on and to make a difference. That is one of the issues that we have here in Eastern Kentucky. Too many times people are still not willing to take the scrutiny on to make something better. And it's tough. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, we're going to come in, we're going to work together and to keep pushing forward and to tout and to show people the benchmarks that we're hitting. Let's establish those and let's show people and say, hey, when we come together, doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, if you're Libertarian, if you're a Purple Party, if you're Green Party monster, whatever, we're coming together for a bigger and brighter area.
Let me ask you this too, because, you're right about the money. I mean, I've been in Frankfort as much as I've been in Martin County and Pikeville lately, really just trying to, chase down as much money as I possibly can. And it's something that you mentioned earlier, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to say what I think. The AML money, like I have to go down and beg for that. And it actually irritates me that I have to go and beg for it, because a lot of that money came off the backs of the people right here in this county and in Pike County, two of the biggest coal producing areas in Eastern Kentucky. And the fact that I got to go and beg for it, and these are good people down there. Don't get me wrong. I've been down there. They're really kind and have been good to me. And we've gotten some of that money to go into our district. But I was down there with them, and I said, look, it almost makes me mad that I even got to ask you for this. You ought to just write me a check. Do you agree with that at all? Like I said, I won't put you on the spot on that, but it just
I do.
I'm gonna put you on the spot, but you're on the spot.
Yeah, you're on the spot now.
100%. No, I do. I mean, that's some of our biggest issue. And you go back over time, and I said this initially on another subject, but we built the Golden Triangle. Don't think we didn't. On the backs of our people through the coal severance tax, and our people through that money, what the 50% number or whatever the number was, when we was booming and so forth, they used those monies for better water, sewer, infrastructure issues in Lexington, Louisville, Northern Kentucky. And what do we have to show for it? This is what we're still trying to pull out now from.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as far as what makes America one of the greatest countries in the world is the fact that we have treated water and proper sanitation. And you've got to know that here, especially here in the hills of Eastern Kentucky, for us to really make that next jump, we've got to have reliable and affordable utilities.
Yeah, amen. Amen. It's not just reliable, but it's affordable too.
Yep.
From a pro rata perspective or per household perspective, we pay some of the largest utility rates in the entire state of Kentucky. Someone explain that much to me. I have no idea. I have looked at it, I have studied, and I'm still dumbfounded to no end how we could do that much. How are we in this situation in more ways than one? You know, you go back and AEP keeps coming back. And I've got family and friends that work for AEP. They tell me they just, I agree with you. But the problem is they keep coming back for more. We can't take anymore. We cannot take anymore. It's putting businesses out of work. The utility rates are putting people out of work. And businesses out. It has. It's not just the water. It's the electric, the whole 9 yards. We need more competition in that sense. Do you know when we're talking about those solar panels, how cheap? And I can't tell you, I've been divulged this information, but when they put those solar panels in, how much cheaper the electricity is going to be going elsewhere. Now, I want you to think about that. If it goes from, we're paying approximately 11 kilowatts right now, 11 cents a kilowatt right now. What if you could get it for 4 cents a kilowatt?
Oh, man. Game changer.
That and then some. And it's getting ready to happen.
Good. So I want to circle back just a minute. And we talked about attracting a lot of businesses, like small engine repair, welding, these things that our workforce here in East Kentucky is already trained up to do a lot of this stuff because, like you said, I've worked in the coal mines. I've worked with some of the most gifted people under the sun. I'm telling you, these guys can figure out anything with a chain locks and some duct tape. You'd be surprised what they can fix. So
no, I'm not surprised because I represent them. They tell me stories.
But so how we attract these companies though? Like what is your plan to attract these companies? Like, I mean, is through tax incentives? I'm sure it's many things, but like how we get Honda in here? How we get UPS in here? How we attract some of these places?
Well, and that's a good question. You've got to have a governor wanting to do it. You got to have a governor wanting to do it. And right now, Beshear realizes, and he wants that to happen in other places. You've got to have a legislative body that's more interested in investing in our people rather than out of state. So those are one aspects. I really thought about this long and hard, one thing, and I'm going to throw this out there. And I think we need to look at one time Lawrence County and even Floyd County had, when my dad was involved, we had economic development coordinators for each and every, or at least those counties did, and they were out specifically attracting industry in. They knew the area they were looking at, they were certified, and they were qualified, and they had the staff, and they were going to it. So do we need to make sure that each county has one? I think yes. How do you pay for that much? Well, I think there's a reorganization issue that we have to look at. I think that we need to have at least a 3-year contract for economic development coordinators for each county, but people that are qualified with competent staff. You put the criteria in place, and they have to report to the fiscal courts. without a doubt. So we have these individuals in place. What about using our gas tax, our natural? We have a natural gas tax to pay for this much, or to help with at least earmark our coal severance tax, what little bit there is, just for paying for these individual salaries, so that the thing that they do is go out each and every day in their staff looking to attract these types of industries. That way they know the individuals and the locations to bring in. We need to make sure that BCTCSs of the world, or not of the world, but for us, we need our vocational schools that are involved in retraining and to train their workforce as they come in. That way we can lower their cost, lower their labor costs. We can utilize our own resources, natural gas, what have you, in order to give them cheaper utility rates when they do come here. And let's look at an incentive package, not like the wood, as I can look over here right now, the furniture store, they got 2 years and they were gone. But let's look at one that does a 30-year type mortgage. Now, why do I say that much? Because they're going to be more ingrained in the communities at that time. Their tentacles, the roots are going to be here. They're less likely to pick up. And they've got a base then of revenue coming in to take care of our schools, to make sure that they're working with our school systems, that they're investing, and they've got a tax revenue that's going on. You can't have a tax revenue that's in Northern Kentucky and you're taking a bus 3 times a week up to, and you're losing that. That's been our problem in the past.
Right.
Coal severance tax money, 50% went there. And what happened? We lost on property tax issues. We lost on this issue. We lost on that revenue. That's a fallacy.
Listen, when they redid Rough Arena with our coal severance tax, I almost lost my mind. I'm going to tell you right now. But anyway, so one of the questions, last question probably for me. A lot of people talk about term limits, and it's usually reserved for the federal Senate, as far as senators go. But what's your feeling about term limits, even as a state senator? How do you feel about this?
Do not want to give an answer that bounces around. I wouldn't have a problem looking at it from my perspective. I got a daughter that's 10. Okay.
Yeah.
So by the time that, 3 terms, if I was able to accomplish these things, or at least vast majority of these things in that time frame, and it's on course to do that much, I'd be glad to step down, let someone else take it at that time. I'd be about 62. She's in college, hopefully, and at least what she's telling me now. I know that stuff changes, but we're in a situation that then someone else needs to come on and take up the gauntlet to move us forward. Term limits are a tricky thing. Let's be honest, because I'm going to tell you, smaller states with smaller electorals, we suffer. And you heard some of that discussion, didn't we, during this pandemic, where we talk about Cuomo and right, wrong, good or bad. Well, we provide more than what Kentucky does, and this. See, that's the thing. They got a bigger population base. They get more attention. So that's the give and take, and our forefathers knew that much. They saw this coming in the Constitution. That's why they set up the way they did. So is it the term limits that's the problem, or the people not doing their job is the problem? That's really an issue.
Brad?
Yeah, I think one thing that frustrates us as voters, and like the 3 of us on here, we all want basically the same things, but we're all over the place on ideas on how to get there. And I know that is a pretty good representation of our area here. Mm-hmm. But what's frustrating is a lot of people have good ideas, and then we vote for them, and whether they go to Frankfurt or whether they go to Washington, things are so polarized now, where the tribes of the right and the left, that nothing gets done, because it's almost like they would rather bind their constituents and hold them back than to give the other side a win. So I guess first, is that a fair assessment? And if so, are you willing to cross the lines to help Eastern Kentucky move forward?
I'm going to tell you this much, and I'm going to start it off with this. So I learned something in practicing law and the type that I do. So you got an issue here to address. Who do you go to? You got to hire an expert. So if a person has a brain injury, you go to maybe 2 experts in this field, or maybe 3 because there's economic circumstance. So you got to go out and hire the best people to represent your client, don't you? You know, I wouldn't be doing my job as if I didn't have an economist, a forensic psychiatrist, or even a neurologist to discuss this much. So here, what I say then, take the same mentality there. No party is perfect. Oh, that's a surprise, isn't it? Really? I mean, really? At the end of the day, no party is perfect. But, you know, one of the problems we have to do, we have to start respecting each other more. The extremism on both ends. AOC does not speak for the Democratic Party. Wacko Joe over here or whoever does not speak for all the Republicans either. They tell me this much. We have to accept that. We have to realize they're going to have good ideas. We're going to have good ideas. The mentality of the old statesmen where they came together and got stuff done, where's it gone to? You know, where's it gone to? You know, listen, if you're human, you're not 100% right. There's only been one perfect person ever to walk this earth, and it sure is not me. And so what I can tell you is we need to take the brightest and we need to take the best, combine them for purposes of Eastern Kentucky. And I can tell you this much. If you look around, how many of us that are Democrats and Republicans or independents, okay, or libertarians, that does not agree that Eastern Kentucky needs better road systems? Anybody raising their hand? How many here that are in the same classification can honestly say that we don't deserve better internet service? Raise your hand. Anybody? How many of them can honestly say that our teachers don't deserve better resources to teach our kids with so that they're productive members of society down the road? How many? Raise your hand. So there's a core things that we can address on. Let's get it addressed. Then we move on to the fringes on the other stuff. But the problem is everybody don't want to give somebody else credit. I don't care who gets the credit. I just want to see it done. You know, I played on a basketball team. I played baseball. There's no I in those things, man. The coaches pound that stuff in your head continuously. Calipari says the same thing. You got to sacrifice with this player. Now, I know that the Louisville fans may not appreciate that. We go, you know, but at the same time, that's the truth. Even John Wall came out here lately and said, I wasn't coming to Kentucky if Xavier Henry was coming because he didn't buy into this. So we've got to buy into the mentality. What our state symbol says, united we stand, divided we fall. And we're falling right now.
So, Glenn, before our time's almost escaped us, I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us, man. Like, it's been a great time. Really informative. Really appreciate you. One of the things we interviewed Senator Wheeler last week, and after we clicked off the interview, he talked about maybe having you 2 guys on for discussion on the same podcast. Would you be up to doing that?
Sure.
Absolutely. Cool.
Sure.
Cool.
I would.
So I got 2 real quick questions, and then
Only
we'll
if
get you
you
out of
wear
here.
something other than red. You know, that red and black still.
Yeah, that's actually getting on my nerves too, Jimmy. No.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. I'll go something more neutral, like Kentucky blue and white. That's all I got in the closet anyway. Literally, it's the only red shirt I own.
What are you doing to me?
Well, it's either that or a Martin County shirt. You know, literally my entire closet is. Amy gets so mad at me. She's like, "Will you buy something other than blue?" You know, because it's all Kentucky.
No.
Speaking of which, about Martin County, Mr. James, you know, I was meeting the superintendent. We were talking, laughing about some stuff, and Sheldon Clark beat Betsy Lane out of the semifinals in the region my senior year by 2 points. And he said, yeah, I know. I played on that team. I was liking you for a second.
So two real quick questions, just policy questions. I meant to get in earlier, and then we started having so much fun, I forgot. So one thing with our budget issue, you know, obviously the state has a budget issue, and one of the things that's been proposed is sports gambling. Would you be in favor of sports gambling?
Provided on the circumstances. You know, you're going to have to look at it just like gaming. You know, it's been brought up too before about, you know, gambling. You know, I want to see a plan in place, locations, how it's going to be put in place, the second and third phases as far as protection of things. I am concerned with we're losing tax revenue out of state. I'm not going to lie about that. That is concerning. But at the same time, I want to see how we're going to minimize the issue of illegalities that go on associated with it. How are we going to address that much? It has to be addressed. It's not just simple to say, oh, I'm in favor of this much, and then you don't think the whole thing through, and it's a complete cluster. But I think there's certain places that we could, we need to. Cincinnati now has it. It's Republican, more of a red state traditionally. They have it. They've got an Indiana red state. Why are we having it here? They've got it down Cherokee. Why don't, they got it in West Virginia. Our people are going there. We're losing revenue, and I know that may not be, how do I say this, the most looked upon by the religious right, if you will. But, again, you have to systematically look at the circumstances, and we're not going to improve our economy by doing one thing. One thing did not cause all this. It's a multitude of factors that we all have to come together and realize that the threads have to be woven tightly for us all to succeed.
Cool.
No, he can't leave here. I got to ask him the serious question.
Well, go ahead. Okay. All right. That's fine. We can do that.
I usually ask one or two questions, but I'm going to ask you the goose question because I want to know, So
I want to know. I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to know the Little Mermaid question too. I want to know. You can ask both, but I want to know the Little Mermaid question.
Okay.
Because look, I told Wheeler this may, affect my vote to answer this question. I'm not going to say.
Listen, I'm 100% so far. Jimmy's wrong 100% of the time so far. Listen, if you got two shows on TV, Aladdin's on one channel and The Little Mermaid's on the other channel, which one you watching?
Repeat that again. Now you went on the first one.
If Aladdin's on one channel and Little Mermaid's on the other channel, which one you watching? This is an important question now.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. My daughter's sitting there with the remote. You tell her which one she's going to be watching because I'm promising I know which one she's going to do. I love Aladdin myself. I've seen it. She might take the remote, but she was a big Little Mermaid fan. So if I have control of the remote, I'm going to watch Aladdin.
My dude. Yeah, son.
Listen, me and your daughter can hang out. You and me, not so much. I don't know what. Look, I can't get over this, aerial
100%, Jimmy. 100%.
I know. I'm going to have to quit letting you ask that question. I'm just getting embarrassed at this point.
The red hair,
Right. I love those redheads. What can I say? I mean, you're really just going to have to quit asking the question. I'm getting embarrassed at this point.
I'll hurt your feelings all day, bro. I ain't scared. Glen, appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Hey, hold on. What's this stuff about bourbon? This title of bourbon? I'm offended.
Well,
are y'all not really connoisseurs of bourbon?
No, bro. You gotta check me out. Come on now.
Hey, over here, man. Look, guys, I've got a few over here.
What are you on right now? What are you drinking right now?
So we've got some Woodford double oak.
My dude. That's where it's at, right?
1792. We got the Blade and Bow.
I told you 1792, Jimmy. Small batch.
And
what's your 1792? The small batch. What is it?
Yeah, small batch.
That's my jam, bro. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, if you're a bourbon, you really, it's a way to plug us and use some information at the same time. We had a guy on this past Thursday that actually works for Modern Thirst. He's a writer, and he came on and talked all about bourbon. It's actually the one we just did. Y'all check it out. It's actually really cool.
I will. I saw that. I've got to do that. Listen, this state has, I went to a restaurant one time, and y'all appreciate that. And they said, I asked them, so what's on your bourbon list? And they started mentioning Tennessee whiskey. And I looked at the person. I said, do what? I said, are you kidding me? And they look at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. And I said, dude, that's whiskey. This is Kentucky. We don't drink. Whiskey's in Tennessee. We drink bourbon and moonshine.
My dude.
That's right, brother.
My dude. Here we go.
Well, Glen, man, we really
questions I don't care about. He answered the bourbon question right. That's the man.
Yeah, there you go. Right, Glen, man, we appreciate you coming on. We don't want to hold y'all evening, but we've had a ball. And so for the people that are watching, Glen, where can they check your stuff out? Where can they find out the information about your candidacy?
Well, we got on the web. We've got our webpage at HammondKentuckySenate.com, and we've got our Facebook page. And I've tried to do some of these issues too, and breaking them down more and more for people because there's, it's a lot of complexity involved with it. And so I've done various videos, and I've done the issue too, as far as on some of our platform on our webpage. So by all means, check it out. Ask questions. It's a learning process for all of us. And what I mean by that much is times change. You have to make adjustments.
Hey,
Nothing perfect.
Go ahead. One thing, like I know you've had a lot of people on your campaign working tirelessly. Like if you want to shut those guys out right now.
Really?
I mean, yeah, they deserve some props, bro. Go ahead.
Do they? You don't know them then, do you?
Yeah, I don't. Hey, Chloe, you ain't no good girl. What you doing?
Chloe Hunt is, she is, I can't get her to speak half the time, and when she does, the group text at times is just, and Colin Morris, he's a cereal fan. So anybody knows Colin, give him some cereal because he loves it. And poor old Chloe is, she gives every one of us in this group a hard time. Continue. Don't let her think for a second she can't pull her weight.
Guys, we'll wrap this up here. So this is Glen Martin Hammond. He is one of the Democratic candidates for the upcoming election on June 23rd for the 31st District State Senate seat. Glenn, thank you for coming on with us, man. We really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Glenn.
For the ones that are watching here, we'll go back to can we announce the one we got Thursday?
No, not yet, bro.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. We got a pretty good one coming up Thursday on the other side of the glass. And next Sunday, we'll be back to our normal podcast. The three of us have got some things to debate out, I think. A lot of stuff to talk about. But, of course, you can find our podcast on Podbean. That's where it actually launches from. You can also get it on iTunes, Spotify. You'll be able to see this particular episode on YouTube as well. And, of course, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Shout out to Eric Beaudry. He's killing it still with the social media. And as we always end our show, from myself, from JD, from Brad, and today from Glenn, no matter how bad your week's been, no matter how bad your day's going, if you just add bourbon, it always gets a little bit better. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank y'all for having me.
Thanks, bud.